Tonight, we journey to the ancient Silk Road, where love bloomed in the most unexpected ways. Imagine merchants falling for strangers through shared glances over spice trades, nomads finding soulmates in chance desert encounters, and travelers discovering that sometimes the most beautiful connections happen when you're far from home. But these weren't ordinary love stories. They were woven with customs so unusual, so tender, you'll wonder why we ever forgot them. So settle in, because tonight we uncover the weird, wonderful ways people found love on history's greatest highway. Before we begin, take a moment to get comfortable, dim the lights, pull up your softest blanket, and let the stresses of today melt away. This is your time to unwind, to drift into stories that soothe the soul. And if you're finding peace in these gentle tales, consider subscribing to Hearts in History, where every episode is crafted to ease your mind and warm your heart. Now, close your eyes, breathe deeply, and let's wander together into the twilight embrace of the ancient world. Chapter 1: A Whisper begins at the twilight-kissed edge of the vast Silk Road, where restless dunes meet an endless horizon. The air shimmers with possibility. Here, where east touches west, where cultures blend like colors in desert sand, our ancestors lived and loved in ways that would seem strange, yet beautiful to our modern eyes. Merchants with weathered hands and hearts full of dreams, nomads who knew the language of stars, explorers driven by curiosity, all finding connection in the most unexpected moments. Picture the morning bustle of a Silk Road market, the gentle chaos of voices in a dozen languages, merchants arranging their precious wares, silks that catch the light like captured rainbows, spices that carry the essence of distant lands. And in this vibrant tapestry of commerce, love quietly weaves its own threads. A Persian trader's eyes linger on a Chinese silk merchant. Their conversation begins with prices, but ends with something far more valuable: the tentative smile of understanding. In those days, courtship was an art of subtle gestures. A merchant might express interest by offering the finest dates from his caravan, each sweet morsel a gentle declaration, or perhaps he'd gift a small vial of precious saffron, its golden threads speaking what words could not. These weren't grand romantic gestures, but quiet offerings, tender invitations to see beyond the boundaries of language and culture, where hearts could meet in the universal language of kindness. The nomads had their own beautiful customs. Under vast star-filled skies, they would share stories around flickering fires, and sometimes a young herder would offer a carefully carved piece of jade to someone who caught their heart. The stone, smooth from months of patient shaping, carried more meaning than any written poem. It whispered, "I have thought of you through countless sunrises. I have crafted beauty, hoping you might see it, and perhaps see me." Caravan journeys created bonds unlike any other, weeks of traveling together through endless desert, sharing water when it was scarce, offering shade when the sun burned fierce. In these moments of vulnerability, hearts opened. A Sogdian woman might teach a Byzantine trader the names of stars in her language, while he showed her how his people read the patterns in sand. Slowly, tenderly, they discover that love needs no common tongue, only common kindness. The tea ceremony became a sacred ritual of connection, different from the elaborate customs we know today, but no less meaningful. Travelers would sit in circles, sharing precious leaves brought from distant mountains. The careful pouring, the patient waiting, the first shared sip, all became a dance of intimacy. Here, walls dissolved. Rank meant nothing, only the gentle rhythm of breath, the warmth of tea, and the slow recognition of kindred spirits. Music drifted through desert nights like silk scarves on evening breezes. A Turkmen musician might play his two-string dombra, its haunting melody drawing listeners close, and sometimes someone would begin to sing, their voice weaving through the instrument's gentle weeping. These weren't performances, but conversations between souls, where a Persian merchant's daughter might find her heart stirring to the rhythm of a Mongolian horseman's ancient song, love written in melodies older than words. Food became the universal language of affection, a Tibetan trader sharing dried yak cheese, so precious in the desert's heat, an Arab merchant offering honey cakes that melted like sweet promises on the tongue. These weren't mere meals, but invitations to trust, to taste a piece of someone's homeland, to understand their joys and sorrows through flavors carried thousands of miles, each shared morsel a step closer to understanding, a bridge built bite by tender bite. The art of gift giving held deep significance, not the elaborate exchanges of royalty, but small treasures that spoke of thoughtfulness, a pressed flower from an oasis garden, a polished stone found on a mountain path, a carved wooden animal that fit perfectly in someone's palm. These humble offerings carried weight beyond their size. They whispered, "I noticed what brings you joy. I remembered what makes you smile. I carried this beauty thinking only of you." Marriage negotiations were delicate dances conducted through intermediaries who understood the subtle art of cultural translation, a Chinese family's concepts of harmony, meeting a Persian family's values of hospitality, Turkmen traditions of strength blending with Sogdian customs of learning. These weren't cold contracts, but careful weavings of two worlds, where love letters traveled in multiple languages, each translation adding layers of meaning, like silk gaining richness through each careful dye. Sometimes love bloomed in the most practical moments, when sandstorms trapped travelers together in makeshift shelters, huddled close for warmth and comfort, sharing water, sharing hope. Here, pretense melted away, revealing the tender vulnerability beneath the traveler's hardened exterior. A Kazakh woman might tend to injured Venetians' wounds, their care more intimate than any grand declaration, healing becoming a language of love more powerful than poetry. The rhythm of the road created its own romance, the gentle sway of camels' steps, the soft tinkling of bells on pack animals, the whispered conversations during night watches. Couples would walk side by side, their steps naturally synchronizing like heartbeats, finding the same rhythm. In the vast silence of the desert, every shared glance became precious, every gentle touch a covenant, every sunset witnessed together a promise that some journeys never truly end. Letters carried by trusted merchants became lifelines of affection, written on precious paper or silk, perfumed with rare oils. These messages traveled for months, crossing mountains and deserts, carrying hopes and dreams. A Byzantine woman's words reaching her Sogdian beloved, speaking of patience, of faith, of love that could wait through seasons of separation. Each letter, a bridge spanning not just distance, but time itself, connecting hearts across the vast tapestry of the ancient world. As caravans reached their destinations and travelers prepared to part ways, they carried more than goods in their packs. They carried memories, connections that had changed them forever. Some would return the following season, drawn not just by profit, but by the promise of reunion. The Silk Road didn't just transport silk and spices, it transported hearts, weaving together the human story, one gentle encounter, one shared smile, one tender moment at a time. Chapter 2, Journey to the market. Dawn breaks across the ancient trade routes, painting the horizon in shades of amber and rose. Merchants stir from their evening camps, brushing dust from weathered robes as they prepare for another day of possibility. Pack animals shuffle restlessly, sensing the anticipation that fills the morning air. Today brings the promise of the great market, where strangers become friends and hearts find unexpected treasures among the silks and spices. The caravan begins its gentle procession, footsteps creating a rhythmic symphony against packed earth. Dust swirls lazily in the warming sunlight as voices call out in a dozen different languages. Children dart between the laden camels, their laughter mixing with the soft chiming of temple bells carried by the morning breeze. Each step forward carries dreams and desires toward the bustling marketplace where hearts and fortunes intertwine beneath colorful awnings. As the sun climbs higher, the first glimpse of the market appears like a mirage, shimmering on the horizon. Tents and pavilions stretch endlessly across the landscape, their vibrant fabrics fluttering like prayer flags in the gentle wind. Merchants call out their wares in melodious voices that drift across the crowds. The air grows thick with the promise of exotic spices, precious metals, and something more intangible, the possibility of connection. The marketplace awakens with a symphony of sounds, wooden wheels creaking over cobblestones, the soft shuffle of sandaled feet, and merchants arranging their precious displays. Silks cascade from wooden frames like frozen waterfalls, their colors catching the morning light. Jade ornaments chime softly in the breeze, while precious stones sparkle from velvet-lined boxes. Each stall becomes a small theater, where stories unfold through gesture, glance, and the careful dance of negotiation. Among the maze of stalls, a young silk merchant carefully arranges his finest wares, each bolt of fabric representing months of careful cultivation and weaving. His fingers trace the intricate patterns as he considers their placement, unaware that across the narrow pathway another pair of eyes watches his gentle movements with growing curiosity. These moments before the crowds arrive hold a special magic when the market belongs only to those who call it home. The spice merchant's daughter measures cardamom into small leather pouches, her movements precise and practiced from years of helping her father. The aromatic clouds that rise from her workstation draw curious glances from passing travelers. She looks up to find a young scribe watching her with genuine interest, his ink-stained fingers clutching parchment, as if documenting not just trade goods, but the grace found in simple, everyday tasks. As the market fills with visitors, conversations bloom in the spaces between commerce. A traveling musician tunes his stringed instrument near a fountain, the melodic notes drawing small crowds who linger longer than necessary. Nearby, a calligrapher demonstrates her art on rice paper, her brush dancing across the surface, while admirers gather close. In these quiet corners, away from the bustle of trade, hearts begin to recognize kindred spirits. The fabric seller's stall becomes a stage for subtle romance. Customers run their hands across silk and cotton, feeling texture and weight. But beneath these practical gestures lies something deeper, a shared smile over the beauty of a particular weave, fingers that brush accidentally while examining the same piece of cloth. These moments stretch like honey in the warm afternoon sun, sweet and golden with possibility. In the jewelry quarter, precious stones catch the light like captured stars. A young woman admires a necklace of polished amber, each bead warm to the touch. The craftsman who created it watches her face illuminate with wonder, and in that moment, something precious passes between them. not gold or silver, but recognition, the realization that beauty shared becomes somehow more beautiful, more meaningful. The tea merchant's corner offers refuge from the marketplace bustle. Steaming cups pass between strangers as they sample exotic blends from distant mountains. Conversations flow as smoothly as the fragrant brew. A ceramic artist shares stories of her craft, while a traveling poet listens with rapt attention. Their words weave together like silk threads, creating something stronger and more beautiful than either could produce alone. As afternoon shadows lengthen, the market takes on a dreamlike quality. Lanterns begin to twinkle in preparation for evening trade. A flower vendor arranges jasmine blossoms in delicate patterns, their perfume mingling with incense from nearby stalls. Passers-by pause to breathe deeply, and in these moments of shared appreciation for simple beauty, connections form that transcend language barriers and cultural differences. The manuscript seller's booth attracts scholars and dreamers alike. Ancient texts and fresh scrolls share space on wooden shelves. Two academics debate philosophy while browsing the collection, their intellectual passion drawing them closer with each exchanged thought. Nearby, a young trader learns to read from a patient teacher, their lesson becoming an intimate exchange of knowledge and growing affection beneath the afternoon sun. Music drifts across the market square as evening approaches. Drummers and flute players create impromptu concerts that draw dancing feet and swaying bodies. Strangers find themselves moving to the same rhythm, sharing smiles and outstretched hands. A traveling minstrel catches the eye of a local baker, their connection sparked by shared appreciation for art that feeds the soul rather than just the body. The ceramic stall displays bowls and vases in earthen tones. A potter demonstrates her wheel technique, while curious observers gather close. Clay takes shape under skilled hands, and watchers find themselves mesmerized not just by the transformation of raw earth into art, but by the quiet confidence and grace of the artist herself. Beauty recognized in both creation and creator. As twilight paints the market in shades of purple and gold, merchants begin securing their wares for the night, but the connections made during the day continue to bloom. Meaningful glances linger across closing stalls. Promises to return tomorrow carry weight beyond simple commerce in the gentle chaos of market life. Hearts have discovered that the most precious treasures cannot be bought or sold. The market settles into peaceful evening stillness. Lantern light creates intimate pools of warmth where conversations continue long after the last transaction. Couples walk slowly between empty stalls, pointing out where they first noticed each other, where shy smiles were exchanged, where the ordinary magic of human connection transformed a simple market day into something extraordinary, a journey that led not just to goods, but to each other. Chapter 3. Under the Desert Sky. As the last traces of daylight fade into deep indigo, the desert transforms into something sacred. Merchants gather in small circles around flickering fires, their faces warm with amber light. The harsh edges of commerce soften here, replaced by something tender and human. Voices drop to whispers as tea is poured and bread is broken. In this sanctuary, away from the bustling marketplace, hearts begin to open like night-blooming flowers. A Chinese silk trader named Wei sits cross-legged beside a Persian spice merchant. Their eyes meet over the dancing flames as stories begin to flow like honey. Wei speaks of his homeland's misty mountains, while the Persian describes rose gardens that stretch beyond the horizon. With each shared tale, invisible threads weave between them, The desert wind carries their laughter into the star-drunk sky, creating bonds that transcend the boundaries of language and culture. Around another fire, a young woman from Damascus carefully arranges dates and pistachios on a worn carpet. Her hands move like a dancer's as she prepares the evening meal. A traveling musician from Samarkand watches her graceful movements, mesmerized by the way moonlight catches the silver threads in her veil. He offers to play a melody while she works. His fingers find the strings of his oud, filling the desert silence with haunting, beautiful notes. The constellation of small fires creates islands of warmth across the vast desert floor. Each circle holds its own intimate world of whispered confessions and gentle touches. A Venetian glass trader shares wine from a leather pouch with a nomad guide. Their conversation flows between languages, half in gestures, half in broken phrases. Yet understanding blooms between them like desert roses after rare rain. The wine loosens tongues and opens hearts to possibility. As the night deepens, stories become more personal, more vulnerable. A young merchant from Constantinople speaks of the family he left behind, his voice catching as he describes his mother's parting blessing. Across the fire, a Tibetan trader nods with knowing eyes. She too carries the weight of distance from loved ones. Their shared loneliness creates an invisible bridge, connecting two hearts separated by thousands of miles, yet united in understanding. The desert air carries the mingled scents of cardamom tea, wood smoke, and jasmine oil, creating an intoxicating perfume that seems to lower inhibitions. Conversations grow softer, more intimate. Hands brush as cups are passed, lingering just a moment longer than necessary. Eyes hold gazes across flickering flames. The harsh realities of trade routes and profit margins fade away, replaced by something timeless and deeply human, the simple need for connection. A young Indian merchant carefully braids prayer beads between her fingers while sharing tales of monsoon rains and temple bells. Beside her, an Arab trader listens with rapt attention, his own stories of desert oases and hidden springs weaving through her words. They discover unexpected parallels between their distant worlds, both shaped by sacred rhythms and seasonal changes. Their voices blend into a gentle duet under the watchful eyes of ancient stars. The fire begins to burn lower, casting deeper shadows and creating more intimate spaces. A Byzantine merchant moves closer to a Persian woman, drawn by her laugh like a moth to flame. She tells him about the gardens of Isfahan, her words painting pictures more vivid than any silk. He finds himself leaning forward, captivated, not just by her stories, but by the way moonlight dances in her dark eyes. Time seems suspended. Across the scattered fires, similar scenes unfold. The desert becomes a stage for countless small romances and deepening friendships. A Turkmen horse trader teaches a Chinese woman the names of stars in his language, while she shows him how to fold paper birds. Their laughter mingles with the distant sound of camel bells, creating a symphony of human connection that echoes across the endless sands, hearts warming despite the cool night air. As the Milky Way blazes overhead in all its ancient glory, conversations turn to dreams and fears. A young Mongol warrior speaks softly of his longing for peace, while an Armenian merchant shares her hopes of finding someone to share life's journey. Their words hang in the crystalline air like precious offerings. The desert holds their secrets safely, wrapped in silence and starlight, creating sacred space for vulnerable hearts. The night air grows cooler, drawing people closer together around the dying embers. Blankets are shared without question, shoulders touch as stories continue. A Jewish trader from Alexandria finds himself sitting beside a Sogdian woman, their theological differences dissolving into shared humanity. They speak of hope, of the universal longing for home and belonging. Their quiet conversation becomes a bridge between worlds, built from understanding and kindness. Music begins to weave through the scattered circles. Someone plays a flute, while another keeps rhythm on a small drum. The melodies carry emotions too deep for words. A Greek merchant finds himself humming along to a Persian lullaby, while a Central Asian woman sways gently to rhythms from distant Constantinople. Music becomes the universal language, transcending barriers of culture and creed, hearts beating in harmony under the infinite desert sky. As the fires burn lower and the night grows deeper, some couples drift away from the groups, walking hand in hand between the sand dunes, their silhouettes dark against the star-painted sky. Voices carry softly on the night breeze, speaking of tomorrow's journey and tonight's unexpected connections. The desert becomes witness to whispered promises and gentle kisses, love blooming in the most unlikely of places and circumstances. Others remain by the glowing coals, wrapped in shared blankets and comfortable silences. The desert night has worked its ancient magic, transforming strangers into friends, competitors into confidants, lonely travelers into intimate companions. Heads rest on shoulders as exhaustion mingles with contentment. The harsh realities of the caravan route feel distant now, replaced by warmth, connection, and the timeless human need to love and be loved. The constellation Cassiopeia wheel overhead, marking the passage of hours that feel like minutes. Some have found romantic connection, others deep friendship. All have discovered that beneath the surface, differences of language and custom, human hearts beat with the same rhythms, the same hopes, the same fears. The desert has stripped away pretense, revealing the tender core of humanity that connects every soul to every other. As dawn approaches and the eastern horizon begins to lighten, the magic of the desert night slowly fades but doesn't disappear. Bonds forged under starlight will endure the harsh light of day. Addresses are exchanged, promises made. Some partnerships will last the journey, others will bloom into lifelong love. The Silk Road has once again proven that the greatest treasures aren't always silk and spices. Sometimes they're human hearts. Chapter 4: Caravan Tales. As dawn breaks over the endless dunes, a caravan stirs to life. Merchants and travelers from distant lands prepare for another day's journey. These weren't just trading expeditions, but moving communities where hearts found their way to each other. Through dust storms and starlit nights, through shared meals and whispered stories, love bloomed in the most unexpected places along these ancient routes. Picture this: a young silk trader from Damascus walking alongside a spice merchant's daughter from Samarkand. Their eyes meet over morning tea as camels snort and bells chime softly. Neither speaks the other's language, yet something deeper passes between them: a smile, a gesture toward the sunrise, a shared understanding that some connections transcend words. This is how romance began on the Silk Road. The caravan master calls for departure, but our young trader lingers, offering his finest silk scarf to the merchant's daughter. Her father watches with knowing eyes. He too once found love on these very routes, decades ago. She accepts the gift, wrapping it around her shoulders as the morning chill gives way to warmth. And so begins a courtship measured in miles rather than days. As the caravan winds through mountain passes, Relationships deepen. Shared hardships have a way of revealing true character. When the young woman's camel stumbles, the silk trader is there instantly, his strong hands steady, both animal and rider. Her grateful touch on his arm speaks volumes. Around them, other traders nod approvingly. They've seen this story unfold countless times before on these ancient paths. Evenings bring the caravan together around flickering fires. Stories emerge from every corner, tales of homes left behind, dreams carried forward. Our young couple sits close, learning each other's languages through gentle teaching. Stars, he says in Arabic, pointing upward. Sidra, she responds in Persian. Their fingers intertwine as they map constellations that will guide both their journey and their hearts. 3 weeks into the journey, a sandstorm threatens the caravan. Travelers huddle together for safety and warmth. In the chaos, our young couple finds shelter beneath a merchant's cart, wrapped in that precious silk scarf. They weather the storm together. When dawn breaks and the winds subside, something has shifted between them. They emerge not as strangers, sharing space, but as two souls choosing to face the unknown together. The caravan reaches an oasis, a welcome respite. Date palms sway gently as fresh water sparkles in the afternoon sun. It's here that formal courtship begins. The young trader approaches the merchant father with respect and ceremony. He offers not just gold and gems, but stories of his family, his honor, his intentions. The merchant listens carefully. He's evaluating not wealth, but character forged by desert winds. Under the oasis moon, an impromptu celebration begins. Musicians produce instruments from their packs. Drums and flutes fill the night air. Our young couple dances, their movements telling the story of their journey together. From tentative glances to shared laughter, from offered comfort to chosen partnership, the entire caravan celebrates, for they've witnessed something beautiful bloom in the harsh embrace of the desert. As the caravan prepares to leave the oasis, decisions must be made. Will she continue with her father toward Constantinople, or will he alter his route toward Samarkand? Love on the Silk Road required such choices, but these two have found something rare. The merchant father, moved by their devotion, proposes a solution. Why not combine their trading ventures, unity in both business and heart? The merged caravan creates new dynamics. Families blend, traditions mix, languages interweave. Our young couple becomes a bridge between cultures. She teaches him the art of spice selection, while he shows her the finest silk weaving techniques. Their union represents more than personal love. It's a symbol of how the Silk Road connected not just goods, but hearts, minds, and entire civilizations. Months pass as the caravan traverses vast landscapes through snow-capped peaks where they share warmth, across scorching deserts where they share precious water. Their love deepens with each mile. Other travelers draw inspiration from their partnership. Young hearts throughout the caravan begin to open, following the example set by courage and commitment, witnessed daily on this remarkable journey through both geography and emotion. One evening, as the caravan camps near ancient ruins, elders share tales of legendary love stories born on these very routes. A princess who chose a humble merchant, a warrior who abandoned conquest for a poet's daughter. Our young couple listens intently, understanding they're part of something larger, a continuing story of human connection that transcends borders, languages, and the passage of countless seasons. The caravan approaches the great trading city of Kashgar. Journey's end brings both celebration and sorrow. Families will part ways, heading toward different horizons, but our young couple faces the future together. Their wedding ceremony takes place in the caravan master's tent, witnessed by friends from a dozen different lands. Bells and prayers mix with the warm desert wind. As vows are exchanged in multiple languages, the entire caravan participates. Gifts of silk, spices, and precious stones create a treasure of multicultural blessing. The bride wears her beloved's first gift, that silk scarf, now weathered by desert winds and softened by countless gentle touches. It's become more than fabric, it's a symbol of protection, commitment, and love that endured through every challenge. Years later, they'll establish their own trading house, welcoming caravans with special tenderness for young hearts, discovering love on long journeys. Their children will grow up hearing stories of how their parents met among the dunes, how shared hardship revealed true character, how gentle kindness bloomed into lasting devotion. These tales will inspire new generations of travelers and dreamers. And so we see how the Silk Road created more than trade routes. It wove together destinies, cultures, and hearts in the rhythm of camel bells and the whisper of desert winds. Love stories unfolded that would echo through centuries, reminding us that sometimes the greatest treasures discovered on any journey are the connections we make with fellow travelers, walking beside us under the same vast stars. Chapter 5, Roots of Desire. Beneath the weathered faces of Silk Road merchants lay hearts yearning for something deeper than simple commerce. What began as fleeting glances across crowded bazaars slowly transformed into profound connections that transcended language and culture. Here in the crossroads of civilizations, attraction evolved beyond the physical, becoming something far more mysterious. These were bonds forged not just by desire, but by understanding, by recognition of shared humanity in the most unexpected places. The Persian spice trader had noticed her weeks before she noticed him, not her beauty, though that was undeniable, but the careful way she tested silk between her fingers, the patience in her negotiations, the gentle respect she showed to every vendor, regardless of their station. It spoke of a character that matched the elegance of her bearing. When their eyes finally met across the morning market, something deeper than attraction stirred, recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits in a world of strangers. She was a Byzantine merchant's daughter, educated beyond most women of her time, fluent in 4 languages, and versed in the mathematics of trade. Yet here, watching this Persian man handle precious saffron with the reverence of a priest, she felt something her education had never prepared her for: vulnerability. He moved with quiet confidence, his dark eyes holding depths of wisdom earned through countless journeys. When he smiled, it reached those eyes, and she understood that desire could begin with respect. Their first conversation lasted 3 hours, conducted in a mixture of Arabic, Persian, and gestures. They discussed trade routes and monsoon patterns, the relative merits of Kashgar jade versus Khatan nephrite. Yet beneath these practical exchanges flowed an undercurrent of deeper recognition. Each discovered in the other a mind that complemented their own, where his experience filled her knowledge gaps. Her fresh perspective challenged his assumptions. Attraction was growing roots in intellectual soil, becoming something substantial and nourishing. Psychologists tell us that lasting attraction requires 3 elements: physical chemistry, intellectual compatibility, and emotional resonance. Our Silk Road merchants were discovering all 3 in ways their societies rarely acknowledged. Across the artificial barriers of religion and nationality, human hearts were finding their natural rhythm. The Persian traders saw past Byzantine customs to recognize a woman of substance, She saw past cultural differences to recognize a man of integrity. Desire was taking root in understanding. The Chinese tea merchant watched this budding connection with knowing eyes. He had traveled these routes for 30 years and witnessed countless such encounters. Some burned bright and brief like desert stars. Others, the rare ones, grew slowly like the ancient trees that lined mountain passes, patient, enduring, transforming both travelers in subtle ways. He recognized the signs, the way conversation flowed despite language barriers, the unconscious mirroring of gestures, the comfortable silences that spoke louder than words. What drew people together on the Silk Road went beyond simple loneliness or convenience. It was the recognition of shared values, despite different expressions. The Persian trader valued honor above profit. The Byzantine woman valued wisdom above wealth. Both understood that true prosperity meant more than accumulating goods. It meant accumulating experiences, relationships, understanding. When two such souls recognized each other across the chasm of cultural difference, attraction became inevitable, not despite their differences, but enriched by them. The roots of desire often surprise us with their complexity. Anthropologists studying cross-cultural attraction find that deep connections form when people recognize universal human experiences beneath surface differences, grief and joy, hope and fear, the longing for meaning and connection. Our merchants were discovering these shared depths, seeing past costume and custom to recognize the fundamental humanity they shared. Attraction was evolving into something more substantial, more nourishing, something that could sustain them through seasons of separation. By the fourth week of encounters, subtle changes had occurred. The Persian man began incorporating small Byzantine phrases into his vocabulary. She started wearing a silk scarf in the deep blue, favored by Persian nobility. These were not conscious choices, but unconscious adaptations. The way lovers begin to mirror each other without realizing it, their hardened merchant exteriors were softening, revealing the vulnerable hearts beneath, hearts that had traveled far from home in search of more than just material goods. The vulnerability was frightening for both merchants, survived by maintaining emotional distance, by treating every interaction as potential advantage or threat. But here they found themselves lowering defenses they had spent years perfecting, sharing stories of childhood, of dreams deferred, of the loneliness that accompanied constant travel. Vulnerability, they discovered, was not weakness, but the foundation upon which genuine connection is built, the soil in which lasting desire takes root and flourishes. Their attraction began to manifest in tender rituals. He would save the choicest saffron threads for her examination. She would seek his opinion on fabric quality before making purchases. Small gestures that spoke of care and consideration, of desire to please and protect. These micro expressions of affection were perhaps more intimate than grand romantic gestures. They revealed hearts opening slowly, carefully, like desert flowers that bloom only when conditions are perfectly right. Patient, precious, worth waiting for. Other merchants began to notice the subtle shift in dynamics, the way these two unconsciously gravitated toward each other in crowded spaces, the way their voices softened when addressing one another, the way their business discussions carried undertones of deeper intimacy. Seasoned travelers recognized the signs. Some smiled knowingly, others warned of the complications that arose when heart and commerce intertwined. But the roots of their connection had grown too deep to be easily severed by practical concerns. The deeper they connected, the more they understood how attraction transcends simple physical or cultural boundaries. Theirs was a meeting of souls who had been shaped by similar experiences of displacement and adaptation, of maintaining dignity while depending on strangers, of finding beauty in temporary arrangements. Their desire was rooted not in exotic fascination with difference, but in profound recognition of similarity. Two hearts that had learned to find home in movement, in each other. As the caravan prepared for the next leg of its journey, both faced a moment of reckoning. Their routes would soon diverge. He toward Samarkand, she toward Constantinople. The practical impossibility of their connection loomed like storm clouds on the horizon. Yet something had taken root between them that distance could not easily destroy: understanding, respect, the kind of deep attraction that survives separation because it is built on more than proximity, more than convenience, more than mere physical desire. The night before departure, they sat together beneath stars that had witnessed countless such partings, speaking quietly of the strange alchemy that had transformed two cautious strangers into what exactly? Friends seemed insufficient. Lovers presumed too much. Perhaps they were something the ancient world understood better than ours. Souls who had recognized each other across the vast distances that separate us all, hearts that had found temporary harbor in mutual understanding, desire that had grown roots in the fertile soil of respect. As dawn approached, they understood that some connections transcend the circumstances that create them. Their attraction had evolved beyond need into appreciation, beyond desire into reverence. They had glimpsed something rare, the possibility that human hearts could find each other despite every obstacle culture and geography could devise. Whether they would meet again mattered less than the transformation they had undergone. They would carry this connection forward, roots planted deep enough to nourish them through all their future journeys. Chapter 6: Trade of Hearts. Deep within the bustling bazaars of Samarkand, where silk whispers against cotton and spices paint the air with warmth, something magical unfolds between the stalls. Here, beneath canopies of golden fabric, merchants discover that the most precious commodities cannot be weighed on scales, cannot be measured in coins. In this ancient marketplace, hearts become the currency, and love, the most valuable trade of all. Picture a young Persian trader, his fingers tracing delicate Chinese silk, while his eyes trace something far more precious: the gentle movements of a merchant's daughter as she arranges her father's wares. Their first exchange is simple, a smile for a compliment about her jade bracelets, but already something deeper stirs beneath the surface. The silk becomes secondary, their glances, the real negotiation, beginning to unfold. In the language of the Silk Road, haggling was an art form, but when hearts entered the equation, the dance became poetry. She would quote a price for saffron. He would counter with verses about her beauty. She would laugh, adjusting her headscarf, while he would linger longer than necessary, examining bolts of fabric that suddenly seemed less important than the music of her voice echoing through the marketplace. The merchant caravans carried more than goods along these ancient routes. They carried stories, customs, and the tender mathematics of attraction. A Mongolian horseman might offer precious furs, not for gold, but for the privilege of hearing a Syrian storyteller's daughter recite poetry. In this world, every transaction held the possibility of transformation, every exchange a doorway to the heart. Watch as she unfolds a length of indigo cloth, her movements deliberate and graceful. He pretends to examine the weave, but his attention is captured by the way sunlight catches in her dark hair. Their conversation flows like honey, mixing discussions of thread count with stolen glances. The fabric becomes a bridge between them, each fold revealing not just craftsmanship, but the growing closeness of two souls, discovering each other. The afternoon heat settles over the bazaar like a warm embrace. Negotiations slow to a gentle rhythm as traders find excuses to linger near certain stalls. A Venetian merchant discovers that buying spices from the same vendor has become his daily ritual, not for the cardamom or cinnamon, but for the soft conversation that accompanies each purchase, their words seasoning the air with something sweeter than any spice. In the gentle art of marketplace courtship, gifts spoke louder than words. A small carved ivory comb tucked discreetly beside purchased silk, a rare blue bead slipped into a pouch of tea leaves. These tiny treasures carried messages that transcended language barriers. In a world where lovers might speak different tongues, the currency of affection needed no translation. Beauty, generosity, and kindness, universally understood. As evening approaches, the marketplace transforms. Lanterns begin to flicker like earthbound stars, casting warm shadows that make every interaction feel intimate. The serious business of trade gives way to something softer, more personal. Conversations linger over cups of mint tea as merchants discover that the day's most precious acquisitions cannot be packed into saddlebags, but must be carefully treasured in the heart. She teaches him the proper way to test silk quality, her fingers guiding his as they feel for texture and strength. But the real lesson unfolds in the spaces between words, in the gentle pressure of her touch, the way she smiles when he asks questions he already knows the answers to. The silk becomes an excuse, a reason to stand close, to breathe the same air, scented with jasmine and possibility. The Silk Road merchants understood that some negotiations required patience. Days might pass before the right moment arrives, when the marketplace quiets, when the usual haggling gives way to honest conversation. In these precious interludes between the buying and selling, hearts reveal themselves slowly, like flowers opening to receive the morning sun. Trust, the most delicate commodity of all, begins to bloom. He brings her father the finest carpets from distant Persia, but his real offering is respect, patience, and genuine interest in her family's traditions. She notices how he listens when her mother speaks of weaving techniques, how he admires her younger brother's skill with numbers. Love, she realizes, is not just about two hearts, but about honoring the entire tapestry of a person's life. The evening call to prayer echoes across the marketplace, and business pauses in reverence. In these moments of shared stillness, something sacred passes between them, not words, but understanding. They may worship differently, speak different languages, but in the quiet rhythm of their breathing, in the way they both look toward the stars beginning to emerge, they recognize something eternal and true. As the season turns and his caravan prepares to depart, the marketplace becomes heavy with unspoken emotions. Suddenly, every bolt of silk, every jar of precious oil, every string of pearls seems inadequate to express what has grown between them. The currency of the heart, they discover, cannot be measured in the usual ways. Some treasures are beyond price. Their final exchange is different from all the others. No haggling, no careful measurement of goods. Instead, she places something small and precious in his palm, a silver ring passed down through generations of women in her family. And he understands this is not commerce, this is covenant, a promise that some connections transcend the temporary nature of trade routes and seasonal journeys. The caravan bells begin their ancient song, calling traders back to the road. But not before love has worked its own magic in bazaars and markets along the Silk Road. Hearts have been exchanged, promises made, lives have been forever altered by the delicate dance of commerce and affection. The road stretches ahead, but carried within the most precious cargo of all. And so, in the twilight of another day on the Silk Road, we see how love found its way into the most unexpected places. Between the measuring and weighing, the buying and selling, hearts discovered each other. In the trade of textiles and spices, souls found their perfect match, and the ancient routes carried more than goods. They carried the tender seeds of love itself. Chapter 7. Cracks in the facade. Even in paradise, shadows fall as merchants prospered along the Silk Road, and hearts opened to new love. The very success that brought them together began to test their bonds. Wealth attracts envy, success breeds competition, and love must learn to weather storms. It never expected, in the golden glow of desert evenings, some relationships would face their greatest trials yet. The bazaars hummed with unprecedented activity. Silk flowed like rivers. Spices painted the air in brilliant hues, and gold changed hands with the rhythm of desert winds. Yet beneath this prosperity, tensions simmered. What had once been cooperative trading partnerships now carried whispers of suspicion, and the couples who had found love across cultures suddenly felt the weight of differences they had once celebrated. Amira noticed it first. The way Hassan's smile seemed forced when she spoke Persian with other merchants. The slight pause before he responded to her questions about his family's customs. Small gestures that once felt like discoveries now carried an undercurrent of judgment. Love, she realized, required more than just passion. It demanded understanding that ran deeper than the surface of attraction. Language became a battlefield. Words that had once sounded like music now carried sharp edges. You don't understand became a phrase that echoed through tents and trading posts. Lovers found themselves speaking different languages of the heart. What one culture viewed as devotion, another saw as possession. What some called freedom, others interpreted as abandonment. Misunderstanding bred like desert storms. The Chinese merchant Li Wei watched his beloved Fatima grow distant. Her laughter, once bright as temple bells, now came measured and careful. She had begun covering her face more completely. When his countrymen visited, he wondered if his love was becoming her burden, if crossing cultures meant one of them would always feel like a stranger in their own relationship. Expectations clashed like swords in the moonlight. Where Persian lovers expected passionate declarations, Chinese partners offered quiet devotion. Where Arab traditions called for family involvement, Byzantine customs demanded individual choice. What each culture considered romantic gestures, others found confusing or even offensive. Love letters became sources of confusion rather than joy. Hearts spoke different languages entirely. Trade rivalries poisoned the wells of affection. When Byzantine merchant Marco's silk prices undercut those of his lover Yasmin's family. Their pillow talk turned to heated arguments about fairness and loyalty. Business partnerships that had once strengthened romantic bonds now threatened to tear them apart. Love and commerce proved difficult bedfellows when profits were at stake. Jealousy crept through the caravanserai like smoke. Dmitri watched his beloved Aisha laugh with other merchants and wondered if her warmth was reserved only for him. Aisha noticed how Dmitri's eyes lingered on visiting Persian dancers and questioned whether his devotion was truly exclusive. Trust, they learned, required constant tending like a delicate garden in harsh desert conditions. Letters from home carried disapproval. Like bitter medicine, families who had initially celebrated their children's adventurous spirits now worried about bloodlines and traditions. Find someone from your own people, wrote mothers who feared losing their sons to foreign ways. Come home before you forget who you are, pleaded fathers who saw cultural mixing as cultural losing, family pressure mounted like storm clouds. Economic pressures strained the strongest bonds when trade routes shifted and profits dwindled. Some merchants faced impossible choices: stay with their loves and risk financial ruin, or return to established markets and abandon their hearts. Khalil held Svetlana close as he calculated the cost of love. Sometimes he realized with aching clarity the heart and the purse demanded different sacrifices. Distance became their cruelest enemy. Seasonal trading patterns meant months apart, and what had seemed romantic in letters felt hollow in lonely tent nights. Elena waited in Constantinople while Rashid traveled to India. Each mile between them amplified every doubt, every cultural difference, every reason why their love might be impossible. Separation tested bonds that had seemed unbreakable. In the darkest hours before dawn, doubt whispered its seductive poison. Malin stared at the stars and wondered if her love for Omar was real, or simply the intoxication of adventure. Omar questioned whether his feelings for Malin were genuine or just the allure of the exotic. Had they fallen in love with each other, or with the idea of crossing boundaries? Crisis arrived like desert lightning when bandits attacked a caravan carrying both Hassan and Amira. Priorities crystallized with stunning clarity as Hassan shielded her with his body. Amira knew that cultural differences paled before the simple truth of protection. In moments of genuine danger, love revealed its authentic face, stripped of complications, pure and unmistakable as starlight. Love proved its strength through flexibility. Couples who survived began creating new traditions that honored both their cultures. Li Wei learned to write Persian poetry, while Fatima mastered the art of Chinese tea ceremony. They built bridges of understanding, one small gesture at a time. Love, they discovered, grew strongest, not when it conquered differences, but when it embraced them. Reconciliation came like morning light after the longest night. Misunderstandings that had seemed insurmountable dissolved in honest conversation. Dmitri and Aisha spent 3 days talking through every fear, every assumption, every cultural blind spot. They emerged not unchanged, but deeper. Love had been tested by fire and emerged transformed, stronger for having faced its shadows. As desert winds swept away the debris of their struggles, these couples discovered something profound. Love that survives misunderstanding becomes unshakable. Trust rebuilt after betrayal grows deeper than original innocence. They had learned that true devotion isn't the absence of problems, but the commitment to work through them together. Their hearts now spoke a new language, the universal tongue of enduring love. Chapter 8: Silk Road Testament. As autumn winds sweep across the desert trade routes, two hearts find themselves caught between worlds, their love now tested by the very differences that once drew them together. In the bustling markets of Samarkand, where spices mingle with whispered secrets, our lovers discover that distance isn't measured in miles, but in the space between two cultures, learning to embrace. Tonight, we uncover their most intimate confessions, hidden within bolts of Damascus silk, folded between layers of precious fabric. Her first letter waits, written in Persian script that flows like water across parchment. She pours her heart onto paper, explaining how his Western ways both confuse and captivate her. Each word carefully chosen, each phrase a bridge across the chasm of their different worlds. The silk merchants unknowingly carry more than textiles. They carry the tender fragments of a love story unfolding. His reply arrives tucked between pages of trade ledgers, ink still fresh with emotion, written in Latin characters. She's learning to decipher, each letter a small victory. He speaks of how her traditions challenge everything he thought he knew about devotion, how her prayers at sunrise taught him new ways to worship beauty. The account books record more than transactions. They document the careful negotiation of two souls finding common ground. In the shadows of the Grand Bazaar, their correspondence grows bolder. She writes of family expectations weighing heavy on her shoulders, of arranged marriages looming like storm clouds. He responds with tales of Western courtship, so different from her world of veiled glances and chaperoned meetings. Yet between the lines, they discover that longing speaks the same language, that hearts beat with identical rhythms, regardless of the customs that shape them. A merchant's pouch becomes their secret treasury, carrying letters wrapped in Chinese jade silk, each one more precious than any cargo. She describes the weight of her grandmother's disapproval, the shame of loving someone so foreign to their ways. He shares his own family's confusion, their inability to understand his fascination with Eastern mysteries. Through their written words, they create a private world where differences become strengths rather than obstacles. Between the folds of Kashmiri shawls, her handwriting grows more confident. She teaches him words in her language through letters, phonetic spellings that make him smile. Nigh SHQ for the deepest kind of love, dill for the heart that belongs to another. He responds with Latin phrases, ancient poetry that transcends cultural boundaries. Their letters become lessons, each exchange a step toward understanding, not just each other, but the beautiful complexity of human connection. The tension builds in their written conversations. She speaks honestly of moments when his customs seem strange, almost shocking to her sensibilities. He admits to feeling overwhelmed by the intricate protocols of her world. Yet these confessions don't drive them apart. Instead, they draw closer, finding courage in vulnerability. Their letters become safe spaces where misunderstandings transform into deeper appreciation, where differences spark curiosity rather than judgment. Hidden in a cargo of Byzantine brocade, he sends pressed flowers from his homeland, dried lavender that carries the scent of distant fields. She responds with jasmine petals, stars of white that speak of moonlit gardens. Their letters now include these small treasures, fragments of their separate worlds, shared across impossible distances, each package a promise, each flower a testament to love's ability to bloom anywhere. The monsoon delays the caravans, and weeks pass without word. Her anxiety bleeds through urgent letters sent by every available messenger. She fears his silence means abandonment, that the cultural divide has finally proven too wide. His delayed response, when it arrives, carries the weight of similar worries, but their reunion on paper is sweeter for the separation, absence teaching them both the true value of their unusual connection. Sewn into the lining of a merchant's coat, she sends her most vulnerable confession, how she dreams of a world where their love needs no hiding, where East meets West, not in conflict but in celebration. He responds by describing imaginary travels they might take together, markets they could explore, temples and churches they could visit. Their letters become blueprints for impossible futures, sketches of dreams that feel more real than reality. The spice traders carry more than cinnamon and cardamom tucked between bags of saffron. Their letters grow philosophical. She writes of how love transforms not just hearts, but perspectives, how knowing him has opened windows in rooms she didn't know existed within herself. He responds with similar revelations, describing how her worldview has enriched his own understanding, their correspondence becoming a dialogue about the beautiful complexity of human connection across cultures. A bolt of Indian cotton conceals her most passionate letter, yet written in the margins of religious texts. Her words dance between sacred verses. She speaks of how love itself seems like a form of prayer, a devotion that transcends the boundaries of any single faith. His response arrives, wrapped in monastery parchment, echoing her thoughts with quotes from Christian mystics who wrote of love as the closest path to the divine. The winter storms make travel treacherous, but their letters persist, carried by determined merchants who've become unwitting guardians of their romance. She writes of how the cold reminds her of the warmth they've created through words alone. He responds with descriptions of how her letters have become his hearth, fire pages that warm him through the longest nights, their correspondence, now their primary source of comfort. Wrapped in Tibetan prayer flags, his letter arrives with news that changes everything, a business opportunity that could bring him permanently to her part of the world. She responds with barely contained joy, yet also fear, the prospect of their written romance becoming reality both thrills and terrifies. Their letters now carry the weight of actual possibility, dreams beginning to crystallize into achievable plans. Her final letter in this chapter arrives pressed between sheets of gold leaf, a metaphor for how precious their correspondence has become. She writes of how their letters have taught her that love doesn't require identical backgrounds, only identical commitment to understanding, that cultural differences can be strengths when approached with open hearts. Their written testimony, now complete, ready to transform into something more tangible. As this chapter of their testament closes, their letters have become more than words on paper, their bridges built one sentence at a time, spanning continents and cultures. Proof that love can flourish anywhere, it's carefully tended. Tomorrow brings new possibilities, new ways for hearts to connect across the beautiful complexity of human difference. But tonight, we rest in the knowledge that true love always finds a way. Chapter 9. In the Embrace of Night. They say that night can heal everything, and along the ancient Silk Road, darkness brought its own form of medicine, under vast desert skies scattered with countless stars. Weary travelers found something more precious than gold or silk. They discovered the gentle art of forgiveness. Here, beneath the infinite canopy of night, love learned to mend what daylight had broken, whispering tender promises of hope and sweet renewal in the cooling, peaceful desert air. As the last traces of sunlight faded behind distant dunes, two hearts that had known misunderstanding finally found their rhythm. The silence between them was no longer heavy with unspoken words, but light with possibility. Night wrapped around them like a gentle embrace, softening the edges of old wounds. In this starlit sanctuary, they discovered that sometimes the most powerful conversations happen without speaking at all, just two souls learning to breathe together beneath the eternal desert sky. The Silk Road had taught them many lessons about patience, about waiting for the right moment, the perfect season, the gentle timing that only the desert understood. Now surrounded by the quiet wisdom of the night, they felt the truth of those teachings. Love, like the finest silk, could not be rushed or forced. It needed time to weave itself properly, thread by delicate thread, until it became something beautiful and unbreakable, something worth the long journey, Above them, constellations told ancient stories of lovers who had found their way back to each other, the same stars that had guided countless caravans across these endless sands. Now witnessed this quiet miracle of hearts healing. A gentle breeze stirred the desert grass, carrying with it the sweet scent of night blooming jasmine from some distant oasis. In this moment, surrounded by the timeless beauty of the night, they understood that forgiveness was not something to be earned, but something to be given freely. The desert night had its own language, spoken in whispers of wind and the soft songs of nocturnal creatures. They found themselves speaking this language too, communicating through gentle touches and shared silence. No words were needed to express the sorrow they felt for the pain they had caused each other. No explanations required for the love that still burned steadily between them. In the embrace of night, their hearts spoke the truest language of all, the language of understanding and grace. Hours passed like minutes as they sat together, watching the moon rise over the ancient trading route. This same moon had shone down on countless travelers, merchants, and lovers who had found solace in its gentle light. They were part of this eternal story now, their own chapter being written in the sand and stars. The night held them carefully, like a mother holding sleeping children, protecting their tender hearts as they learned to trust again. In the cool night air, they began to share their deepest fears, not the dramatic ones, but the quiet terrors that lived in the spaces between heartbeats. The fear of being truly known and still being left behind. The fear of loving completely and having that love misunderstood. These whispered confessions floated up toward the stars like prayers, and somehow, in the telling, they lost their power to wound. Night had a way of making even the darkest fears seem conquerable. They spoke of the misunderstandings that had driven them apart, how words had been twisted by distance and doubt, how silence had been misread as indifference. But under the starlight, these misunderstandings seemed small and fragile, like shadows that could only exist when light was blocked. In the full illumination of honest conversation, the shadows dissolved, leaving only the simple truth of two people who had always loved each other, even when they couldn't find the words to say so. The night grew deeper, and with it came a profound peace. They found themselves laughing softly at memories that had once brought pain, seeing the beauty in moments that had seemed broken. The desert breeze carried away the last remnants of hurt, replacing them with something lighter. Hope, perhaps, or maybe just the simple joy of being present with someone who truly knew them. In this sacred space between midnight and dawn, they were rewriting their story as shooting stars streaked across the vast expanse above them. They made quiet wishes, not for grand gestures or perfect love, but for the courage to be gentle with each other's hearts. The stars seemed to approve, twinkling their ancient blessing down upon these two souls who had found their way back to tenderness. Night wrapped around them like the finest silk, soft and protective, holding them in its peaceful embrace as they learned to hold each other again. They discovered something beautiful about forgiveness in those quiet hours. It wasn't a single moment of dramatic reconciliation, but a gentle process of choosing love over hurt, again and again, like the steady rhythm of their breathing in the cool night air. Forgiveness was something they could practice with each heartbeat. Each time they chose understanding over judgment, they felt their connection growing stronger, more resilient, more true. The night sounds created a symphony around them, the distant call of an owl, the whisper of wind through ancient rocks, the soft padding of a desert fox on its nightly hunt. These sounds reminded them that life continued its beautiful, mysterious dance, even in the darkest hours. They were part of this eternal rhythm now, their hearts beating in time with the pulse of the desert, their love becoming one more note in the endless song of the night. In the pre-dawn hours, when the sky began to lighten ever so slightly, they felt something shift between them. It was subtle, like the first hint of warmth before sunrise, but unmistakable. The heavy weight of misunderstanding had lifted, replaced by something precious and fragile, trust, being reborn. They held this new beginning carefully, like cupping water in their palms, knowing that it would need gentle tending to grow into something strong and lasting. As dawn approached, they realized they had been changed by the night, not in dramatic ways, but in small, essential ones. They looked at each other with softer eyes, spoke with gentler voices, listened with more patient hearts. The stars began to fade as the sky lightened, but the peace they had found together remained. Night had taught them that healing doesn't always require daylight. Sometimes the most profound transformations happen in darkness, in quiet, in the sacred space of shared silence. The first birds began their morning songs, and with them came the promise of a new day. But they were in no hurry to leave this peaceful place where their hearts had learned to trust again. The night had been their teacher, showing them that love could survive misunderstanding, that forgiveness was always possible, and that sometimes the most beautiful journeys happen not across distances, but across the small space between two hearts, choosing to be gentle with each other. As the sun painted the eastern sky in shades of rose and gold, they knew they would carry this night with them always. It would be their reminder that even in the darkest moments, love has the power to heal and transform. The Silk Road stretched endlessly before them, full of new adventures and unknown challenges, but they would face them together now, their hearts strengthened by the night's gentle wisdom, their love deepened by its peaceful embrace. Chapter 10: The Heart's Oasis. In the endless expanse of desert sand, where the sun beats mercilessly and water is precious as gold, something extraordinary bloomed between travelers. Love became their sanctuary. Merchants and wanderers discovered that even in the harshest landscapes, the human heart could create its own oasis, a place of tenderness where souls found refuge from the burning world around them. Here, beneath star-filled skies, romance defied the desert's cruel embrace. The desert tests everything: metal, fabric, resolve, but it could not break the bonds forming between those who journeyed together. Caravans became floating islands of connection, where shared hardship transformed strangers into lovers. When water ran low and hope seemed distant, couples would share their precious rations, not from desperation, but from devotion, their love becoming sustenance more vital than food or drink, each gesture of care creating ripples of warmth across the cold desert nights. Samira, a spice merchant's daughter from Damascus, met Hassan during a sandstorm that lasted 3 days. Huddled together in makeshift shelters, they spoke in whispers while wind howled outside. She taught him Arabic poetry. He showed her Persian calligraphy in the sand. When the storm passed, they realized their hearts had become intertwined like the dunes around them, reshaping with each breath, each shared glance, their love story written in footprints that the desert wind could never fully erase. In oasis towns, wedding celebrations merged traditions from distant lands. Chinese silk ribbons danced with Arabian incense. Persian musicians played while Indian dancers moved to rhythms that crossed continents. These unions weren't just between two people, but between entire cultures. Languages blended in wedding vows, creating new dialects of devotion. Couples exchanged gifts that told stories of their homelands: a jade bracelet from the east, frankincense from the west, love becoming the ultimate translator between worlds. The desert moon witnessed countless proposals under its silver glow. Lovers carved promises into date palm bark. They buried treasures together, creating secret caches only they would remember. Some couples planted seeds at wells, hoping future travelers would find shade in their love's legacy. These rituals transformed the harsh landscape into a gallery of romance, every oasis holding whispered vows, every dune hiding love letters written in stones, arranged just so. The desert, remembering every tender moment. Fatima and Chen met at a crossroads where four trade routes converged. She spoke only Arabic, he only Mandarin, yet somehow they understood each other perfectly through gestures, drawings in sand, shared meals of dates and tea. Their courtship became a beautiful dance of discovery, learning each other's customs, teaching their own. When they finally spoke the same words, it was I love you in 6 different languages. Their hearts had already been fluent in the only language that truly mattered. Desert nights revealed the depth of these connections when temperatures dropped and darkness wrapped around caravans like a blanket. Couples would lie side by side, sharing body warmth and stories. They spoke of distant homes, of dreams bigger than the horizons they chased. Some carved their initials into camel bells, creating musical love songs that chimed with every step. Others wove hair into rope, binding their lives together literally. These intimate rituals transforming survival into something transcendent. Water ceremonies became sacred acts of love in a land where every drop was precious. Sharing one's ration became the ultimate declaration. Couples would perform ritual washings before marriage, using water carried from their homeland springs. They'd mix sand from their birthplaces, creating new earth where their children might someday play. These ceremonies honored both the harsh reality of desert life and the abundance that love could create, turning scarcity into a celebration of what truly mattered most. The mirages that tormented lone travelers became symbols of hope for lovers. They saw their future homes shimmering on horizons, phantom cities where they'd raise children who spoke multiple tongues. These visions weren't cruel tricks, but promises whispered by the desert wind. Couples would walk toward mirages, hand in hand, knowing they were chasing something real, their love making the impossible seem tangible, every shimmer on the sand, a glimpse of the life they were building together, one step at a time. Some love stories were born from rescue when travelers collapsed from heat exhaustion. Strangers became saviors, tending to each other with gentle hands and cool cloths. Recovery became courtship. Gratitude bloomed into affection. These relationships carried an extra tenderness, forged in life's most vulnerable moments. The rescued would often say their beloved didn't just save their life, but gave it new meaning, creating bonds deeper than romance, connections that touch the very essence of what it means to care for another human soul. Trade goods became love tokens with extraordinary meanings. A bolt of silk wasn't just fabric, but a promise of comfort. Precious stones weren't mere wealth, but captured light to brighten dark moments. Spices carried the essence of homeland, allowing lovers to taste each other's memories. Couples would create joint inventories, mixing their merchandise and their dreams, their caravans becoming mobile, hope chests filled with items that told the story of their growing love, each trade stop adding new chapters to their shared narrative. The harshest desert crossings forged the strongest bonds when sand filled eyes and throats, when the sun seemed intent on destruction. Couples learned to be each other's shelter. They'd take turns leading when one grew weak, share the burden of navigation when paths disappeared and feared swords. Some tied themselves together with rope, refusing to let sandstorms separate them. These extreme conditions stripped away everything superficial, leaving only the essential truth that love, like water, becomes most precious when survival depends on it. And children born on the Silk Road carried their parents' love stories in their very beings, raised in caravans. They spoke the language of wind and sand as fluently as any traditional tongue. These young ones became living bridges between cultures, embodying the beautiful fusion their parents created. They played games that mixed traditions from across continents, sang lullabies that blended Eastern and Western melodies, their existence proof that love doesn't just survive in harsh conditions, it thrives, creating something entirely new and wonderful. Evening camps transformed into theaters of romance after long days of travel. Couples would create private spaces with hanging fabrics. They'd share meals seasoned with stories of home, feed each other dates while planning their future. Musicians would play softly, creating soundtracks for whispered conversations. The desert that seemed so hostile during blazing days became their intimate companion under starlight. These nightly rituals of connection, proving that love could bloom anywhere, even in the world's most challenging places. Some couples chose to stay in oasis towns, becoming keepers of the rest stops that sheltered future lovers. They'd plant gardens, dig deeper wells, build shade structures, their love literally making the desert more livable for others. These permanent residents became the wise counselors for passing romances, offering advice born from their own desert courtships. They understood that love, like an oasis, required constant tending, but with care. It could provide refuge for countless souls seeking respite from life's harsh journeys. The legacy of these desert love stories spread far beyond the Silk Road. Returned travelers carried tales of romance that flourished in impossible places. Their stories inspired others to believe that love could survive any hardship, and that two hearts committed to each other could create their own oasis wherever they went. The desert had taught them that love isn't about finding perfect conditions, it's about being each other's perfect sanctuary, creating together what neither could build alone, a heart's oasis in any wilderness. Chapter 11, Desert Storms. The horizon shimmers with deceptive calm as our travelers make their way deeper into the vast expanse, but the desert holds secrets, and today it will test the very foundation of their growing bond. What begins as gentle warmth beneath their feet will soon become nature's most formidable trial, a reminder that love, like the shifting sands, must weather every storm to truly endure. Here, connection becomes survival itself. The morning started with such promise, golden light dancing across endless dunes, painting shadows that seemed to beckon them forward. They walked in comfortable silence, their footsteps creating a gentle rhythm against the soft sand, sharing water from the same vessel, offering dates from weathered hands. These small gestures of care had become their language, yet somewhere beyond the distant peaks, dark clouds began to gather. Nature was preparing her lesson. She noticed it first, a strange heaviness in the air, a shift in the wind's whisper that spoke of something approaching. Her companions saw the concern in her eyes before she even spoke. Together they scanned the horizon, watching as what seemed like a distant mountain began to move, growing taller, darker, more ominous with each passing moment. The sandstorm approached like a living thing, hungry and relentless. Time suddenly became precious. There was no shelter for miles, no rocky outcrop, no friendly oasis to offer refuge. just endless sand stretching in every direction. But they had each other, and somehow that felt like enough. Quickly they began to prepare, wrapping their faces with cloth, securing their precious supplies. Their movements became synchronized, each anticipating the other's needs. In this moment of growing danger, their partnership transformed into something deeper. Trust became their anchor. The storm's roar grew louder, like the breath of some ancient desert spirit awakening from slumber. Wind began to whip around them, stinging their skin with tiny grains of sand. Visibility started to fade as the world turned amber, then brown, then nearly black. They reached for each other instinctively, fingers intertwining like roots seeking water. In this swirling chaos, human touch became their compass, connection their only certainty in an uncertain world. When the full fury hit, it was like being caught inside nature's rage. Sand struck them from every angle, the wind howling with voices that seemed almost human. They huddled together, backs pressed against the storm, creating a small shelter with their bodies. Her breath warmed his neck, while his arms formed a barrier against the driving sand. In this intimate fortress, they discovered something profound, that protection flows both ways when hearts are truly aligned. Hours passed like sand through an hourglass. The storm raged with relentless intensity, testing their endurance, their resolve, their faith in each other. When exhaustion threatened to separate them, gentle words whispered against the wind brought strength. When fear tried to creep in, steady heartbeats reminded them they were not alone. They took turns being the shelter, the comforter, the brave one, learning that true partnership means sharing both strength and vulnerability. In the storm's eye, there came a moment of perfect stillness, a brief respite, where they could see each other clearly through sand-crusted lashes. Her eyes held gratitude, his held determination. Without words, they understood that this trial was changing them, not breaking them apart, but forging something stronger. Like metal tested by fire, their bond was being tempered by adversity. They were becoming something more than two separate travelers. When the winds shifted, bringing fresh waves of stinging sand, they moved as one, adjusting their position, redistributing their weight, sharing the burden of endurance. Each small act of consideration became magnified in this harsh environment, offering the last sip of water, adjusting cloth to better protect exposed skin, speaking words of encouragement when hope wavered. These gestures, simple under normal circumstances, now carried the weight of devotion, love expressed through sacrifice. The desert seemed determined to test every fiber of their beings. Sand filled every crevice, every fold of clothing, every breath they drew. Yet through it all, they maintained their connection, hands that refused to let go, voices that continued to comfort despite the chaos. They began to understand that this storm was not their enemy, but their teacher, showing them depths of strength they never knew they possessed, revealing love's power to transform hardship into meaning. As the storm reached its peak intensity, something beautiful happened. Their individual fears dissolved into shared courage. Personal discomfort became mutual endurance. They stopped thinking of themselves as separate beings, weathering a trial, and began moving as a single entity responding to challenge. This was love's alchemy at work, transforming two vulnerable travelers into one resilient force, united not just in comfort, but in adversity's crucible. Time lost all meaning in the swirling amber darkness. Minutes felt like hours, hours like days, yet somehow, wrapped in each other's presence, they found a strange peace within the chaos, their breathing synchronized, Their heartbeats found a common rhythm. They discovered that shelter isn't always about walls and roofs. Sometimes it's about becoming refuge for another soul, about creating safety through the simple act of staying close when everything else falls away. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, the storm began to weaken. The howling winds softened to whispers. The driving sand settled into gentle swirls. They remained motionless for long moments, afraid to believe it was truly ending. When they finally looked up, the world had been transformed. Dunes had shifted, landmarks had disappeared, familiar paths had been erased, yet they were still there, still together, changed but unbroken, tested but not defeated. Emerging from their cocoon of protection, they saw the aftermath with wonder. The desert had been sculpted anew, carved into different patterns by the storm's fierce artistry. Golden sunlight broke through dissipating clouds, illuminating a landscape both foreign and familiar. They stood slowly, brushing sand from their clothes, their hair, their skin, but the most profound changes were invisible, written in the language of trust, carved into the geography of their hearts. Looking at each other with new eyes, they saw not just companions, but partners, in the truest sense, people who had chosen to face nature's fury together rather than seek individual safety. The storm had stripped away pretense, revealing the essential truth of their connection. Like the desert itself, their relationship could be both challenging and sheltering, demanding and nurturing, harsh and beautiful. They had learned to weather life's tempests as one. As they resumed their journey across the transformed landscape, their steps carried new confidence. The storm had become a chapter in their story, not an ending, but a deepening play. They walked closer now, their shoulders occasionally touching, their pace naturally synchronized. Ahead lay more adventures, more challenges, more opportunities to choose each other, but they carried with them the knowledge that love tested by adversity emerges stronger, like diamonds formed under pressure. Chapter 12, Aftermath of Desert Winds. The storm is past, leaving behind a silence that feels heavier than thunder. Across the endless dunes, merchant caravans emerge from their shelters, blinking in the pale morning light. But something has shifted in the spaces between heartbeats. Love letters scattered by wind now lay half buried in sand, their ink blurred, but their longing still whispered through the desert air, carried on currents that know no borders. In the quiet that follows chaos, tender cracks begin to show. Like vines creeping through ancient walls, doubt weaves its way into hearts that once beat with certainty. A Persian trader stares at his beloved silk scarf, now torn and weathered. The fabric mirrors his own spirit, frayed at the edges, yet still holding its essential beauty. He wonders if their love can survive the distances that separate them, the storms that test every fragile bond. Across cultures and continents, the same questions echo: does love grow stronger under pressure, or does it simply endure? A Chinese merchant's daughter traces patterns in the sand, remembering her Sogdian lover's promise. The wind carried away his words, but did it also carry away his devotion? In the aftermath of nature's fury, human hearts search for signs that their connections remain unbroken, that their roots run deeper than the surface storms. The marketplace awakens slowly, vendors rebuilding stalls with careful hands, yet beneath this restoration lies a deeper reconstruction, hearts piecing themselves back together after the emotional tempest. An Arab poet sits among his scattered verses, wondering if the woman who inspired them still thinks of his words. The desert wind has rearranged everything: geography, expectations, and the delicate architecture of long distance love. that relies on faith and memory alone. In the soft light of dawn, shadows reveal what daylight cannot, the subtle fractures that appear when certainty gives way to doubt. A Turkmen weaver examines her tapestry, noting where threads have loosened in the storm. Each loose thread reminds her of promises made and kept, of love that spans cultures but trembles under pressure. She begins to mend the weave, understanding that some repairs make the fabric stronger than before, more beautiful for having survived. Time moves differently in the desert aftermath. Minutes stretch like centuries, while hearts decide whether to trust or retreat. A Byzantine merchant holds a jade bracelet meant for his beloved, its surface clouded by sand. He wipes it clean with trembling fingers, searching for reflections of their shared dreams. The bracelet gleams again, reminding him that beneath the accumulated dust of doubt, love's essential clarity remains, waiting to be rediscovered, polished by patience and hope. Letters emerge from hiding places where desperate hands once tucked them for safety. Each unfolded page tells of love, tested by absence and uncertainty. An Indian spice trader reads words written in moonlight, penned by fingers that trembled with longing. The ink has run in places, creating new meanings from old promises. He traces each smudged word with his own finger, understanding that even blurred love letters carry the weight of sincere hearts seeking connection across impossible distances. The caravan prepares to move again, but some hearts remain anchored in the space between before and after. A Mongolian horseman adjusts his saddle, thinking of the Armenian maiden who gave him her blessing. Did that blessing survive the storm that scattered his certainties like leaves? He closes his eyes and listens for her laughter in the wind, hoping that love's music can still be heard above the whispers of doubt that follow every heart through the wilderness. In quiet moments, when the world holds its breath, truth emerges. Love's authentic face appears beneath the masks of expectation and fear. A Roman diplomat opens his journal, pages brittle from sand and time. He writes of his Egyptian beloved with fresh honesty, admitting his fears alongside his devotions. The storm has stripped away pretense, leaving only the essential core of feeling raw, vulnerable, but somehow more beautiful for its exposed humanity, its willingness to remain open despite uncertainty. Recovery takes many forms along the ancient routes. Some hearts mend through action, others through stillness. A Jewish merchant begins preparing gifts again, choosing each item with renewed tenderness. Amber beads that catch light like captured sunrises, silk that flows like water, blessed by moonbeams. His hands work with the careful devotion of one who has learned that love's true test comes not in the giving, but in the faith that giving will be received and treasured. Night settles gently over the recovering landscape, bringing with it the courage that darkness sometimes offers. Under stars that witness all earthly struggles, hearts dare to hope again. A Scythian warrior woman polishes her mirror, preparing for journeys that might reunite her with her distant love. The reflection shows more than her face. It reveals a spirit that refuses to surrender to despair, that chooses connection over safety, vulnerability over the comfort of emotional walls. Messages begin to flow again across the trade routes, tentative at first, then growing bolder as trust rebuilds itself. Word by careful word, a Kurdish storyteller shapes new tales of lovers separated by storms but united by persistence. His voice carries the wisdom of one who has witnessed both the breaking and the mending of hearts. He speaks of love as a living thing that grows stronger when tended with honesty, patience, and the willingness to begin again after every ending. The desert keeps its own counsel about matters of the heart. Vast and patient, it has witnessed countless storms and countless recoveries. Now it watches as human spirits slowly unfurl like flowers after rain. A Tibetan monk walks among the dunes, collecting scattered prayer flags, each one a hope made visible. He understands that love, like prayer, requires both speaking and listening, both reaching out and trusting that someone somewhere is reaching back through the endless space between hearts. Healing happens in moments too small to notice until suddenly the heart realizes it can trust again. A Greek philosopher sits by his dying fire, writing observations about love's resilience. He notes how affection adapts, how it finds new channels when old ones become blocked. His pen moves slowly across parchment, recording the quiet miracle of hearts that choose hope over fear, connection over isolation, the risk of love over the safety of emotional solitude. Tomorrow brings new possibilities for those brave enough to carry their hearts into uncertain territory. A Sogdian princess prepares for sleep, whispering prayers for her beloved's safety. She has learned that love's greatest strength lies not in avoiding storms, but in weathering them together, even when together means separated by continents and connected only by faith. Her dreams will carry messages across impossible distances, proof that some bonds transcend every barrier that the physical world can create. As sleep embraces the weary travelers, the desert wind carries their hopes into the darkness. Each breath becomes a prayer, each heartbeat a promise to keep loving, despite uncertainty. The aftermath of desert winds reveals not devastation, but renewal, hearts cracked open to let more light enter, love deepened by the knowledge that it can survive any storm. In the gentle darkness, dreams weave new connections between souls who refuse to let distance or doubt diminish their capacity for wonder, for trust, for the endless miracle of choosing each other. Chapter 13. Tales embroidered on silk. Along the ancient trade routes, every caravan carried more than precious goods. They carried stories, woven into the very fabric of their journeys. These tales of love and longing traveled thousands of miles, passed from merchant to merchant like treasured silk threads, each story adding another layer to the rich tapestry of human connection, binding strangers across vast deserts and towering mountains. In the bustling bazaars of Samarkand, a Persian trader would share tales of his beloved back home, her letters tucked safely between bolts of crimson silk. His voice would soften as he described her laughter, how it reminded him of silver bells dancing in the wind. Other merchants would nod knowingly, for they too carried such precious memories, wrapped carefully alongside their earthly treasures. The Silk Road became a living library of human emotions, where Chinese courtship poems traveled west, while Arabian love songs journeyed east. These stories transcended language barriers, told through gestures, through the careful arrangement of gifts, through the way a merchant's eyes would shine when speaking of someone far away. Love, it seemed, needed no translation along these ancient paths. In the caravan rest houses, as evening fires flickered low, travelers would gather to share their deepest stories. A Byzantine woman might speak of waiting for her husband's return, while a Mongol warrior would describe the strength he drew from his wife's blessing. These tales became threads in an enormous tapestry, each story adding warmth and meaning to the collective human journey. The silk merchants understood something profound, that the most valuable cargo wasn't always what filled their wagons, but what filled their hearts. They carried love letters written on precious paper, marriage proposals wrapped in the finest fabrics, tokens of affection that would bridge continents, each item a testament to love's ability to transcend any distance, any cultural divide. Some merchants would spend months crafting the perfect gift, selecting just the right shade of jade, the softest silk, the most fragrant spices, not for profit, but for love. These offerings became symbols of devotion that crossed borders, carrying messages of the heart from one end of the world to the other, proving that love speaks a universal language. The stories tell of unexpected meetings, of hearts finding each other in the most unlikely places. A Chinese princess who fell for a Sogdian merchant's gentle manner, an Arab poet who found his muse in a Turkic trader's daughter. These cross cultural romances became legends, their tales embroidered into the very fabric of Silk Road history, proof that love knows no boundaries. In the mountain passes where the air grew thin and the journey treacherous, travelers would share stories to keep their spirits alive. Tales of reunion kept them warm. Stories of devotion gave them strength. These narratives became as essential as food and water, nourishing the soul through the darkest moments, reminding everyone why the journey was worth making. The Buddhist monks traveling westward carried their own tales, stories of compassion and universal love, while Christian pilgrims heading east shared parables of divine affection. These spiritual love stories mingled with earthly ones, creating a rich blend of human and sacred devotion, all woven together in the great tapestry of the Silk Road's emotional landscape. Women along the route became keepers of these stories. Innkeepers who offered shelter also offered listening ears. They would collect tales like precious gems, storing them in their hearts, then sharing them with the next group of weary travelers. These women became the living libraries of the Silk Road, preserving love stories for generations to come. The artisans who created the beautiful textiles, the delicate pottery, the intricate jewelry, they too embedded stories into their work. A weaver might include a hidden message in the pattern. A goldsmith would craft symbols of eternal devotion. Each handmade item carried not just beauty, but the emotional weight of countless love stories, preserved in silk and stone. Some tales speak of sacrifice, of merchants who chose love over profit, giving up lucrative trades to stay with their beloved. Others tell of patience, of couples who waited years for reunion, their faith unwavering despite the vast distances. These stories of commitment became part of the Silk Road's enduring legacy, inspiring future generations of travelers. The musical instruments that traveled the route, the Chinese guqin, the Persian oud, the Central Asian rapa, they all carried love songs, melodies that could express what words could not. Musicians would play these tunes in distant lands, connecting hearts across cultures through the universal language of music, each note a thread in love's endless tapestry. Perhaps most remarkably, these ancient stories still resonate today. The Chinese merchant missing his wife feels familiar to anyone separated from loved ones. The Persian trader's devotion echoes in modern long distance relationships. The courage to love across cultures still inspires us, proving that human emotions transcend time, connecting us to our ancestors through shared experiences of the heart. The Silk Road taught us that stories, like silk itself, become stronger when woven together. Each individual tale, each personal experience of love and loss, added strength to the collective narrative, creating a tapestry so rich and durable that it continues to warm our hearts centuries later, reminding us of our shared humanity, our universal capacity for love. As we close this chapter, imagine those ancient caravans slowly disappearing into the desert twilight, their stories now part of our own. The tales embroidered on silk continue to unfold in every act of love, every moment of connection, every story we choose to share. The Silk Road lives on in the threads that bind our hearts together. Chapter 14, The Final Thread. As dawn breaks over the endless dunes, our travelers find themselves at the crossroads where all paths converge. Here, beneath the vast canopy of stars, fading into morning light, the threads of countless love stories begin to weave together. Each tale we've followed, each heart we've witnessed, now joins in a tapestry of connection. The Silk Road has always been more than trade routes. It has been the great weaver of human hearts across cultures and time. In this sacred space where desert meets sky, where east embraces west, the merchants prepare for their final exchange. But what they're trading now isn't silk or spices, it's understanding, it's acceptance. Amara and Hassan stand together, their hands intertwined, watching as other couples from different lands do the same. Persian poets hold hands with Chinese scholars. Byzantine traders smile warmly at Indian mystics. Love has become the universal language they all speak fluently. The morning air carries the scent of jasmine and sandalwood, mixing with the familiar smell of desert sand and distant rain. This is the fragrance of unity, of barriers dissolved by genuine affection. Our couples have learned that love doesn't require you to abandon who you are. Instead, it invites you to become more, to expand, to embrace difference as a gift rather than a challenge. Each relationship we've witnessed has been a small revolution against the prejudices of their time. As the sun climbs higher, casting long shadows across the sand, the travelers begin their final ritual. They take threads from their own clothing, silk from China, cotton from India, wool from Byzantium, linen from Egypt. Each person offers a strand, and together they begin to weave. This isn't just fabric they're creating, it's a symbol of their journey, a testament to how separate paths can become one beautiful tapestry when guided by understanding and respect. Malin steps forward, her delicate fingers working the golden silk thread. She glances at her beloved Rashid, and in his eyes she sees not the stranger he once was, but the familiar warmth of home. Beside them, Zara and Dmitri add their threads. Their love story began with suspicion and cultural confusion, but transformed into deep appreciation for each other's traditions. They've learned that love is the great translator, turning foreign words into familiar melodies of the heart. The weaving continues as more hands join the sacred work. Elena and Omar contribute their strands, remembering how their families once opposed their union. Now they understand that their children will inherit not confusion, but richness, not division, but wholeness. Their love has become a bridge between worlds. Each thread they add represents a fear overcome, a prejudice dissolved, a heart opened. The tapestry grows stronger with every addition, more beautiful with every color. As the weaving progresses, the travelers share their stories quietly, not grand proclamations, but gentle whispers carried on the desert wind. They speak of moments when love felt impossible, when cultural differences seemed like mountains too high to climb, when families rejected, when communities judged. But here they are, proof that love finds a way, that patience and understanding can move even the most stubborn hearts, that time itself becomes an ally to those who persist with kindness. The young interpreter, who has witnessed all these love stories unfold, steps back to observe the beautiful scene. He sees how each couple has grown, not just in love for each other, but in love for the world. They've become ambassadors of acceptance, living proof that difference doesn't divide, it enriches. Each partnership represents hope for future generations, children who will grow up knowing that love transcends every boundary humans try to create. That connection is stronger than separation. The completed tapestry catches the desert wind, rippling like water made of light. Every color, every texture, every pattern tells a story of courage rewarded, of patience blessed, of hearts that chose expansion over fear. The merchants hold it up together, and in that moment they see themselves reflected, not as separate peoples from distant lands, but as members of one human family. The Silk Road has done more than connect continents, it has connected souls across every divide. As they prepare to continue their separate journeys, there's no sadness in the parting, only gratitude. They know that what they've created together, this understanding, this acceptance, this love, will travel with them wherever they go. They'll carry it back to their homelands, like the most precious cargo, spreading the message that difference is not something to fear or eliminate, but something to celebrate and learn from. They've become merchants of tolerance, traders in understanding. The camels are loaded, the supplies secured, but something has fundamentally changed. These aren't the same people who met weeks ago with suspicion and uncertainty. They've been transformed by love, not just romantic love, though that too, but the deeper love of human recognition, the joy of seeing yourself reflected in someone who seems completely different. They've discovered that beneath every cultural practice, every tradition, every belief, beats the same human heart. As the first group begins to move eastward and another turns west, they carry with them more than memories. They carry a new way of being in the world. When they encounter strangers in future travels, they'll remember this moment. They'll choose curiosity over judgment, connection over division. They've learned that every person they meet is carrying their own thread, their own piece of the great human tapestry, waiting for the right moment to weave it into something beautiful. The interpreter watches the caravans disappear into the shimmering heat of the horizon, but he's not alone. Other young travelers remain, drawn by the stories they've heard, eager to learn the languages of love that transcend words. They understand that the Silk Road is more than a path through the desert. It's a symbol of possibility, proof that even in a world that often emphasizes difference and division, connection and unity are not only possible, they're inevitable when hearts remain open. The sun reaches its peak, casting everything in brilliant clear light, and in this moment of perfect illumination, the truth becomes crystal clear. Love has always been the real treasure of the Silk Road, more valuable than silk, more precious than spices. The merchants knew this instinctively. That's why they kept returning, year after year, facing danger and hardship. They weren't just trading goods, they were participating in the grand exchange of human experience, weaving the world together, one relationship at a time. As evening approaches and the desert begins to cool, new travelers arrive at the crossroads, and the cycle continues. Love finding a way, barriers dissolving in the face of genuine connection. The Silk Road endures, not as a historical artifact, but as a living symbol, a reminder that in every age, in every place, the human heart seeks the same thing: recognition, acceptance, love. The thread continues to weave through time, connecting us all in ways we're only beginning to understand. The final thread ties gently in the evening breeze, not with the finality of an ending, but with the promise of continuation. What began as separate stories has become one universal truth. Love transcends every boundary we create: time, distance, culture, language, belief. When we approach each other with open hearts, when we choose understanding over judgment, when we remember that we're all part of the same human story, then every meeting becomes sacred, every connection becomes a thread in the infinite tapestry of love. Chapter 15, Echoes on the Silk. As we reach the end of our journey through these ancient trade routes, something remarkable becomes clear. Every footstep left along these paths, every whispered promise between lovers from distant lands, every tender glance shared across cultural divides, has woven itself into the very fabric of time, creating echoes that still resonate today. Think of the Persian merchant who learned to say "I love you" in Chinese. His words didn't simply fade with the desert wind. They became part of the Silk Road's memory, embedded in the stones that witnessed his devotion, in the stars that guided his caravan home, in the dreams of every traveler who followed that same path. Centuries later, the Byzantine princess who chose love over politics. Her choice created ripples that spread far beyond her palace walls, influencing trade agreements, inspiring poems, changing the course of diplomatic relations. Her courage to follow her heart became a thread in history's tapestry, golden and unbreakable, woven into the collective story of human connection. Every silk scarf that carried a lover's scent across thousands of miles, every carefully chosen gift that spoke of longing, every letter written in multiple languages just to be understood. These weren't merely romantic gestures, they were acts of creation, building bridges between worlds, leaving imprints that would guide future hearts seeking connection. The desert oasis where strangers became lovers, where different tongues learned to speak the universal language of affection. These places became sanctified by human emotion. Their waters still carry the memory of promises made. Their palm trees still rustle with the echo of whispered endearments. Their sands still hold the warmth of embraces. Listen carefully to the wind across these ancient routes. You can hear the laughter of couples who danced under starlit skies, the gentle conversations of partners learning each other's customs, the soft sighs of contentment as barriers dissolved in the presence of genuine love. All these sounds became part of the Silk Road's eternal song. The Armenian goldsmith who crafted jewelry combining Eastern and Western designs. Each piece he created carried the DNA of cultural fusion, worn by women who themselves embodied the beauty of diverse traditions coming together. These ornaments became talismans, carrying forward the message that love transcends all boundaries, all differences, all distances. Children born from these cross-cultural unions, they became living bridges, walking embodiments of the Silk Road's greatest gift, not spices or silk or precious stones, but the revelation that human hearts speak the same language, that love creates understanding where words fail, that families can be built from the most unlikely connections. The caravansaries where strangers shared meals and stories, where loneliness was healed by unexpected companionship, where hearts opened like flowers in the presence of kindness. These waypoints became temples of human connection, their walls absorbing countless tales of love found, love lost, love rekindled, love triumphant over every obstacle. Every route that was traveled for love rather than profit, every detour taken to see a beloved face, every risk accepted for the promise of reunion, these journeys carved themselves deeper into the landscape than any merchant's path, creating invisible highways of devotion, routes that future lovers would instinctively follow, guided by ancient wisdom. The translators who learned new languages, not for commerce but for courtship, their dictionaries became love letters, their grammar lessons became poetry, Their pronunciation practice became whispered promises. They created new vocabularies of affection, mixing tongues and cultures, proving that love always finds a way to communicate across any divide. Festivals that began as simple celebrations but grew into traditions where different communities would gather, sharing food, sharing stories, sharing the universal joy of love's triumph. These gatherings created new holidays, new customs, new reasons for people to come together, weaving celebration itself into the fabric of cultural exchange. The musicians who composed melodies that blended Eastern and Western scales, their songs carried the rhythm of heartbeats from distant lands, the harmony of voices learning to sing together. These musical creations became the soundtrack of cross cultural romance, tunes that would be hummed by lovers for generations, melodies that made strangers feel familiar. Now, as we trace these ancient paths, we see that they were never really about commerce at all. They were about connection, about the irrepressible human need to reach across difference and find similarity, about the courage to love despite uncertainty, about the faith that somewhere out there, someone understands your heart's language. Every choice made in the name of love, every barrier crossed, every risk taken, every hand extended in friendship, every heart open despite fear. These moments didn't disappear with time, they accumulated, layer upon layer, creating the rich sediment of human experience, the foundation upon which all future love would build. And so tonight, as you drift toward sleep, remember that you too are part of this continuing story. Your capacity for love, your openness to connection, your willingness to see beauty in difference, these are threads in the same eternal tapestry, echoes of the same ancient song, proof that love truly is the silk that binds us all.